Hello and welcome. You're listening or watching and listening to Build with Nhost, where we share the stories from engineers building products and launching businesses all over the world. I'm your host, Johan. I'm CEO and co-founder of Nhost. In this episode, I speak with Morten, who's from Norway and also a CTO and co-founder of Celsia. So Celsia is a Norwegian startup, and I want to get this right, so I took this from their LinkedIn page because it's a bit trickier. So Celsia, they provide a software platform with the tools for non-ESG expert for measuring the sustainability level and getting their sustainability score in accordance with the EU taxonomy. Okay, so a little bit of a tongue twister. Okay, so in this conversation, we talk about Morten's life hack for hackathon as a student. We talk about what the EU taxonomy is and how Celsia help companies in this field. And we also talk about our mutual love for TypeScript and GraphQL code generators. This was a very interesting conversation with a fellow Nordic builder, and I think you will enjoy it. Welcome everybody, and I'm here today with Morten. Morten, nice to have you on the podcast.
Hello, thank you so much for inviting me. I think this is super fun.
Nice. All right, cool. Morten, where do you sit at the moment? Where do you call in from?
Yeah, currently I'm in Oslo. So Oslo, Norway, close to Ekebrygge to be specific.
To be very specific, okay. And are you from Norway or what's your background?
Yes, indeed. So I'm Norwegian, but I'm also half Swedish.
Nice.
So we're a bit of what do you say, country fellows.
Yes.
So very Scandinavian. That's why I'm so blonde.
Nice. And so that's cool. And if we start a little bit about your background as a builder and engineer, so how did you can you remember the first time you started building something with computers and programming? Like how was there some book you read or some course in school, or how did you start? How did you end up starting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll have to think way back. Not I'm that old, but it really started with kind of using the computer in general. I think in early elementary school, I was making like animation movies with Windows Movie Maker and Paint, like some superheroes that I drew in Paint frame by frame and made into movies. And then how that kind of evolved into just using the computer a lot. And eventually I thought Flash games was a lot of fun. So rip Flash, just for that matter.
No one is using Flash anymore, yeah.
It's very sad. Yeah, now it's like even not supported and you get prompted to uninstall it. And it breaks my heart every time. But Flash games in like Macromedia, Flash editor, and I don't remember exactly when, but it was the same summer as Michael Jackson died. Then that was sometime in when I was younger. I made a lot of Flash games this summer with one of my friends.
Right, and you seem like I see in the background you have a lot of instruments. You seem to be very creative. So what kind of things did you build back then? Because I presume it was not only computer programs, but maybe as you mentioned animations and movies and these kind of things.
Yeah, exactly. So it varied quite a lot. I wouldn't say that I kind of really started programming back then. It took a couple of years until that became more of the main thing I was doing. There was a lot of Photoshop. I like to take pictures as well, and making movies, and I'm making Flash games, and just general also like some graphic design. In high school, I went to like a media and communication line, a vocational high school, where it also really started. So then a lot of the assignments was to maybe make the design for a website or an app or something like that. And then I quickly realized that if you also make the app work or the website be live, the teachers will give you quite a lot higher grades pretty quickly. And then yeah, eventually that kind of took overhand, and I thought that the programming part was even more interesting than the other.
Nice. And do you remember what kind of languages did you use back then?
Also in Flash, it was ActionScript first 2 and then ActionScript 3, which
Got it. Okay.
I really think is amazing, amazing language. But then, yeah, it was some Python and some Java, and just also, of course, HTML and JavaScript.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And where did that interest take you from there? So starting out in doing some assignments in school. So after high school, what did you end up focusing on and doing?
Yeah, so a bit late, I realized that, okay, let's actually study programming. So I studied programming in networks at University of Oslo. But since I went to this kind of media and communication high school, I didn't have enough math to actually get in there. So the last semester I did like this side course and thing after school every day for a couple of months to get all the right, because they didn't actually have it at my school even. So I had to go quite far away to do it. But then I ended up at University of Oslo, the home of object-oriented programming. Fun fact.
The home of, yeah, okay. So the author of C++, right, is Norwegian.
Yeah, or it's Kristen Nygaard and Ole Johan Dahl who made Simula and a couple of the really first of those languages.
Okay.
So something universe, they made sure that kind of all of the students were aware of. So we had to go around and be happy about that all the time.
Yeah, but that's good. Well, it's a quite a thing to be I guess glad about as a university. Kind of a good credential or whatever you want to call it. Nice. Okay, so yeah, I was actually in a similar position before I started joining university. You mentioned math and these kind of things. I didn't have the credentials for joining. Like in Sweden, it's a little bit different. It's like civil engineer, if I translate it right away. So I also like took one semester to just get my math. What do you say, math credentials to the right point, so I could join as well.
Yeah, that's nice.
But it ended up well, and yeah, you learn a ton at university, like to have like a solid computer science, just a good base for computer science going forward. So what kind of courses did you take in university when it comes to computer science, maybe specifically?
Yeah, so it was kind of the normal object-oriented programming, so a couple of levels and databases and algorithms and data structures. And there was especially one course, it was called Logical Methods with the professor Roger Antonsen. I think it's discrete mathematics, pretty much with like set theory and combinatorics and all those fun stuff. And I think that was amazing. That was quite a hard course, or like the average grade was quite low, but it was so much fun and a really good professor as well. And then also had a course where I built an operating system. I guess that's maybe into computer engineering or something like that. For us, it was just informatics, so I'm not exactly sure where everything landed.
Yeah,
but that was a rough course at the last semester, where I think I learned a lot. Not necessarily things that is so useful now. I haven't, but at the same time, kind of the effort of going through a bigger task with a goal spanning over several months. I think that was really great, and then also really having to do some problem solving along the way and a lot of research. So that was cool, but probably I also think that it's really nice to get this kind of theoretical part set up and really know why things are in certain ways and how to think about it. But combining it with practical things along the way, I think was really key for me. So yeah, I spent a lot of time trying to get like summer jobs and part-time positions, and I'm attending hackathons and game jams and all of these things during university, and that was amazing.
Yeah, nice. And do you, like, in your profession today, and when you is in the industry, do you see a because there's a lot of well, first of all, there's a lot of there's a big need for programmers, so there's a lot of these boot camps where maybe they don't go through a 3-year or 5-year university what do you say, degree. So how would you say going through that hard time during university has helped you in maybe your day-to-day job, even if you maybe don't build operating systems today? Would you say it helped, or would you say it was unnecessary, or how do you think about it?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I think it's a very individual thing. I don't think it's necessary for everyone. I think that if you're the type that really can like learn on your own and have a big hunger for figuring things out, there might be at least faster or quicker ways to get to the same place. But at the same time, it's also it's a structured approach where you make sure you reach a lot of the subjects. You've kind of heard about a lot of things, and I think that's really valuable, especially sort of we had this course, systems engineering or something like that, or if it was more about the process, and or software engineering, I think it was just called. It was more about the process, architecture, and a lot of things that I really didn't understand at the time. And this was a first year subject even, so it was, I would say, way too early to really begin with all of those things. And a lot of my classmates thought it was kind of probably the most boring class we had. But further out in university, and I actually was a TA in that subject as well, because I thought it was a bit interesting. And then
what is a TA?
Or a teaching assistant or a group teacher. So had students a couple of years on the younger, I would have follow-up classes, because we kind of have a structure where there's 300 people and then you have seminars after. And then all like the same information was so much more valuable for me after having had a couple of summer jobs and internships, and knowing what's going on. And that's probably also a subject that has been good afterwards. And yeah, I'm not so sure what you learn at the bootcamp. It's quite often I've been thinking that I'm a bit jealous as well, because it seems like a very practical approach. You get much faster to kind of, using React and building web pages and apps and doing things. But at the same time, you might kind of not know about some quite huge concepts that that are good to know. So yeah, my diplomatic answer is that a mix is probably the best, and that counts kind of on both sides. But if you go to university and make sure you get a lot of practical experience throughout the years, I think that's a great combination. But then also, if you have a more practical way into programming and try to learn the fundamentals and the theory on your own, I think that can also work out really well.
Yeah, I agree totally with that. I mean, I think it's important to do both, right? So both have the theoretical background, so you sort of understand what's going on under the hood. But as you say, like having that practical experience, like you hit so many problems every day when you actually try to use it and build something small and just play around with stuff. So that's very, very useful. And you start to see patterns and you start to have some intuition of what's going wrong and trying to solve those problems quicker, I think. So totally agree.
It's like kind of like when you said patterns, they're like design patterns in general. I think it's impossible to really understand or just learn that from theory and architecture and like it's difficult to have it make sense without having some having some hooks to put them on. I'm not sure how you say that in English.
Yeah. But that makes sense. Yeah, for sure. And talking about getting practical experience, you mentioned some hackathons and some code jams that you participated in. Was this during university or was it after? Or
both.
Both.
Yes. So maybe most during university, and I actually had the privilege of going on an exchange semester to California. And there were so many hackathons. You could go at every weekend. You had to like choose which of the 10 would you want to attend.
Oh.
And sort of it had the benefit of there's free food and there's free drinks and there's t-shirts and a lot of stuff that you actually appreciate as a student.
Exactly. Yeah, that's all you need as a student. Food and t-shirt.
Yeah. I only had t-shirts that I've gotten for free. Now I've upgraded to just black ones, but
good choice.
But then that was really cool to just spend 48 hours or whatever, sit up all night and build things while not having to worry about food. That was awesome and something I really enjoyed. And usually you would do it as part of a team and with some friends, and that's even better.
How you mentioned like so many hackathons, like was this there were a few hackathons in Sweden when I was in university as well, and there are some hackathons now as well, but no, it seems like there were quite a lot at the place you were at the time. Why were there so many, and like who arranged all these hackathons, and how was the setup? Were there themes, or how did it work?
Yeah, so when I was in exchange in San Jose, which is in like the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, all that stuff. So then there were a lot of different tech companies that would invite students to try out their APIs and then give prizes to the ones that used it the most, best or fun way. And a lot of organization doing it, and a lot of companies, and also some universities. So I think, so the first one I went to was Hacking EDU, which was an edtech hackathon arranged by a lot of different sponsors, including like WikiHow and Coursera, I think, and some stuff like that. And then when I went back to Oslo again, then there were a lot less, but I at least made sure to keep my eye open and go to like every single one that happened.
Oh, so you really enjoyed going to these hackathons, it seems like. What do you do during these hackathons? Like, what's your? Do you have like a pattern that you follow there as well, or like, do you do it alone? Do you do it with friends? What do you build?
Yeah, so I actually try to not follow a pattern. So that was sort of one of the things I thought was most fun, was that I would get the opportunity to try out like really different things. One time like Android programming, and then some React, and then some this, and then some that, and just really test different technologies, which I think I appreciate now after, or a bit later, that I've got a taste of a lot of things. And then I would usually try to bring my friends along, and often they would join, and sometimes not. And then I would go alone and either join a theme there or also just do it by myself. Sounds a bit lonely when I think about it, but usually there's teams.
Yeah. No, but there's usually a lot of people around, and some happening all the time, basically. So yeah, and so was it during those hackathons that you like tried out various frameworks and programming languages that you sort of like? Did you find some specific framework, language, or thing that you enjoyed more than something else?
Yeah, a little bit. But to be honest, I think my conclusion in a way is that you can use anything to build anything. It's not so much about what you pick. Like, you should of course pick the tools that fit the best for what you're making, but it also should never be a limitation. Having the idea and making a product is sort of the core. But nowadays I'm doing a lot of React and some GraphQL and those things. But that's that's probably something I've a bit landed on, that it usually works.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I mean, you're not there's a lot of React developers, so it's for sure a popular framework. So it seems to be a great choice indeed. So yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit about what you're doing currently. You are working at a startup. So maybe we can start with how maybe what is the startup, and how did you get started with it?
Yes, so we're Celsia IO. Feel free to check it out. But we are building software for sustainability measurements and reporting and management. And of course, we're starting in the small, but then our visions are quite big. And how I got started with it was actually, fun enough, through a hackathon. So a bit over a year ago, me and one of my then colleagues and now co-founder attended an online climate change hackathon, which there are quite a lot of. And then we've heard about this EU taxonomy, which is a regulatory change that is coming up, which I'm honestly quite excited about. It's like a set of rules that really will make sure that we get some transparency and realness in this sustainability field. So then we try to make something around it, and a bit later we kept going even after the hackathon, and it slowly evolved into something bigger. We got some validation, and then finally this summer we took the leap and went all in. So
nice. And I think we need to break down what this is, because the first time I heard about the EU taxonomy, I didn't know what it was. So how would you explain what this is and where your company comes into the picture?
Yeah, for sure. So taxonomy is actually a word that means like a classification system. So it's a way of determining either kind of what species an animal or a bug is. But then in this case, the EU taxonomy is for classifying activities that are sustainable. And then sustainable can mean a lot of things. But it touches on kind of the whole climate change, pollution, emissions, but also being kind to ecosystem and biodiversity and social safeguards and circular economy and a lot of like sustainable things to make sure we have a sustainable future. And then it sets a lot of criteria for these activities that defines whether or not they are aligned or not to this system. And the format of this is a couple of thousand pages of EU directives that can be quite hard to understand and really know what it means for a single company. So from next year, companies over a certain size needs to report on this. So they don't necessarily need to be 100% aligned and do everything perfectly, but they at least need to be transparent about what they're doing. And that's really the core of this, that's like show what you're doing, and then consumers, investors, and everyone can make an educated choice rather than greenwashing and being fooled by marketing.
All right. Yeah. So this is like a directive from EU, like the European Union, which I think. Wait. Are Norway part of the European Union? It's a little bit.
Yeah, it's an interesting relationship. But in essence, you could say that so Norway is not a part of the EU, but we are still quite involved and following most of the standards. So, for instance, the free roaming and GDPR and all of those things still count here, and the EU taxonomy will as well.
Got it. Yeah. So, okay, that makes sense. And the taxonomy from the European Union is, I mean, it's about classifying different stuff, but is it about classifying companies in various different verticals, or is it more specific to sustainability? Or like this EU taxonomy, is it more towards sustainability and environmental stuff, or is it in general? Would you?
Yeah, so it's actually the biggest advantage of this, and then also our tool on top, is that it makes sustainability comparable, because it is one of the biggest problem is comparing to companies in different sectors doing completely different things. How do you know where to invest your money for the most sustainable future? And it's quite hard. So in essence, what you have to report on the taxonomy is a set of like scores, defining how much of your revenue, CapEx and OpEx are aligned with the criteria. So then you end up with a system where you can compare an energy manufacturer to like a transport company or something like that. So yes, but it's focusing in the first place on the activities that can do a substantial contribution positively to especially climate change, but then it will widen over time and hit more areas.
Got it. And how big of a company do you need to be to, I mean, start to report these numbers or thing? What is it that you report? Is it numbers or what?
Yeah,
or is it like?
It's a score in essence.
It's a score.
Yeah. So usually a percentage. So you could say 90% of my revenue comes from activities that are taxonomy aligned, and then that's something to brag about compared to another company having only 5 or something like that.
So what would be an example here? For example, like 90% of my revenue comes from taxonomy aligned.
So let's say
services and goods.
Yeah. So let's say you have an energy company.
Yeah.
And then your the main thing you're doing is maybe coal or gas or oil. But then you're also, which is kind of nice, you're also doing some wind or solar power on the side and starting to build that up. And I think that's a trend you can see in many places. So then you usually in branding and marketing, you would say, oh, we are doing solar power. We are super sustainable. But then here you can kind of expose that actually it's only a certain percentage of the total activity of the company that comes from there, while the main thing is still this and this. But then another nice thing is that in addition to revenue, It also there's also a score on your capital expenditure, which is pretty much your investments. So if you are spending a lot of money investing in building new solar parks or wind parks, then a lot of the investment can be aligned, even though maybe your revenue still comes from your old sources. So that still makes it transparent to see kind of where you're heading as well as where you currently are.
Got it. So they both classify, you know, the revenue coming into the company, but also classifying like money going sort of out from the company, but it could like be invested inside the company. So where they invest their own money for the future.
And that makes it hard to hide and pretty much just do some nice things and then brand that as your main approach.
Got it. Yeah. Would you say this is mainly focused on energy companies, or is it like all sectors from various different industries?
So there are 100 and something different activities, and it can vary a lot. It's a lot of manufacturing, making buildings, or shipping, and there's even an activity for I think data processing and something like that. So if you're building computer systems that are contributing to lower emissions, that can be considered a sustainable contribution to mitigation of climate change. While if you're making Flash games, then it would not be relevant for the taxonomy. So then it's outside of those activities. So it is focusing on the activities that can make an impact right now.
And why is it hard for companies to follow these regulations? Like you mentioned, like several thousand pages of I guess like a description of how this would work. Why is it hard for companies to follow this?
I think that's it's a part of when something is new, it takes some time to really get into it. So a classic example is then to compare this to GDPR. Why is privacy so difficult to manage for a company? Well, it's because it is involved in many places. If you have the right systems in place, it can be quite easy. But to go from nowhere to somewhere great is a journey, and it requires some education in the companies so that the people making decisions and doing things know a little bit about this subject, which is not their main subject necessarily. And then also just managing it can be quite hard. So that's where we come in and try to make a smooth experience on the whole end to end.
Nice. And so describe a little bit how your system works. Like what happens inside your system or your application that you're building here?
So first, we made like a system to sort of model your company, divided into different units that can be reported on separately. And so it's all aggregated in the end to sort of this company score. But to really kind of give a thumbs up and a thumbs down on a whole company can be quite misleading, or also not so useful. While what's really useful is knowing that in this department and that factory and this place, there we're doing something that needs to be fixed or needs to be improved. So we have a system then for dividing your company and structuring it in our system, and then connecting this to the elements of the taxonomy, which revolves around these activities. Then similarly, we've also made a system to model the taxonomy itself, which is revolving around these activities, and then a couple of objectives, which is pollution and climate change and biodiversity and etc. And then modeling these and defining some criteria that the taxonomy has described in their various papers. And then sometimes this can also be quite complex because it will reference a different directive and reference. And then we've done the job of kind of digging through this and lifting up these data collection points. So right now we have over 1,300 points of data collection that will enable the users to see first and what is relevant for them by modeling their company and connecting it, and then bringing up what's relevant and nothing more, but also nothing less.
All right, yeah, that makes sense. Sounds like a quite complex system already. So talk me through
trying to keep it as simple as possible, while at the same time solving the issue at hand.
Yeah, exactly. That's the balance you need to do, right, as an engineer all the time to make it simple. You want it to make it as simple as possible all the time, right? So not too complex. But just talk me through how did you, like you mentioned this started as a hackathon, like how did the technology that you use inside your company evolve from the hackathon up until this point, say? And what were some of the decision or surprises or learnings that you had along the way?
So now we're still quite a young company, so I think a lot of the evolution is yet to come. But at the hackathon it was sort of a wild west, and we still lacked both some of the domain knowledge and really the vision of what is necessary. So quite a lot of things changed just from that to sort of the first version. But then I quite quickly ended up with wanting to use GraphQL due to sort of these then two systems that are also connected. And I felt like that was a quick way to have a rapidly evolving API. Adding fields and relationships without having to spend time setting up endpoints and changing things. So that worked out quite well. But then a lot of the time was also spent kind of changing this model and testing out different ways. And
with GraphQL first, like did you build out that yourself, or what kind of database did you hook it up to? Do you remember?
Yeah, so first step was FaunaDB, which was a really, again, kind of from the hackathon perspective, I think it was a great experience. It was then you just define your GraphQL schema, upload it, and boom, database and resolvers and everything is set up. And then you do some code gen on the front end, and you have all your types ready to rock together with some hooks. So that was a very good start. And then also just changing the schema every once in a while, and then pretty much everything could be fixed in a flash. Then as the application became a bit more complex, we wanted to upload files. We needed to actually have some users and a login system. Fauna could support that as well, but then I was noticing that I was looking at all these different things needed, especially files, database, GraphQL API, and authentication system. And then I tried to see where I could get all of this at once, preferably managed, and without too much overhead. So then I noticed a new and cool startup called Nhost that could deliver some of this, or
nice.
Quite a lot of this actually.
Nice. And did you have previous experience of these kind of backend as a service? Like you mentioned Fauna, you tried that out. Did you try any of the other players out there before this product or during? Like how did you evaluate?
So one of the things that I think really got me was actually you in your marketing, you're saying a lot of things like you want to be like Vercel for backend, and that hit me quite a lot, because I've been a big fan of how extremely easy that is to use, and just using like Next.js and going from a simple command to a published website in less than kind of a couple of minutes. It's been as a hackathoner, that's very valuable when you only have 24 or 48 hours to do your thing. But then throughout the years I've been trying like Firebase and different things. I was looking into Prisma and that as well. But Hasura, I heard a lot of good things about before, also actually at my previous job where we've been looking into it. So that's it. Also GraphQL in general, I had some previous experience with professionally, so that's why I'd like to continue with that. Did that answer your question actually, or I don't remember?
No. I was just wondering about your thought process around, there are so many different ways you could build an application, right? And there are so many different ways you can have a backend and the front end. We have Next.js, we have Vue, Nuxt, Gatsby, plain React in the front end. So there's so much going on in the front end, back end, same thing, like various databases, various API layers with REST, with GraphQL. Authentication can be handled in multiple ways. So there are many things to choose from, right? So just like curious to maybe hear a final thought about how do you think about all of this? Like, how do you think about there being so many different options when you sort of need to pick something, and then you have a business to run and other like you can't fiddle around with every framework and for a year until you decide. So
yes, so that brings on another part part of the thought process was trying to be or try to have a high sense of changeability, and that's sort of what I try to do in general. So there's a lot of talk about maintainability and readability, but I think changeability, I read some article about it once and got hooked. But that's really a good thing to optimize for, because
what is changeability in your mind?
So in my mind, that means that it's easy, or maybe it's not scary to make a change, and preferably that it shouldn't involve too much work. So in that way, I think relying on sort of not too much proprietary technology can be a good thing. So that's for instance, one thing about FaunaDB is that it has the GraphQL layer, which was a great place to start. But then to really get the most out of it, you should use Fauna query language, or FQL. And that's something I presume they've made themselves, and it's probably really good, but it will also be quite of a lock-in very early, which is not something I found as a plus. While then, so making sure that the interfaces are not too proprietary and that are portable, and that's something I kept in mind. So then, like Postgres and GraphQL and React are very generic and open parts, and can then also be like switched out and mixed and matched endlessly. So that was part of the thought process. But also, I think with all of these things, it's so easy to get be like a deer in headlights and just, you want to use it all, or you don't want to use any of it, and you can get overwhelmed. So trying not to spread too wide, and keep it a bit close to each other, and just making sure that it's, again, easy to change this and easy to change that. And if you do something in the backend, you don't have to, you can do some quick things in the front end to make sure that they're on the same page, and then not be scared of deploying is really high on the list.
Why is that high on the list?
I think that builds speed, or rather, I think one of the biggest antagonists of speed would be being afraid to do things, which is especially crucial in early stage when you're building a project. You don't have a lot of users or customers at the moment. Then it's really about just changing, iterating, and getting figuring out where you want to get. So if you're then already afraid that things will break and your complex pipelines here and there won't work as they should, that can be a problem.
Yeah. How many people are you on the team currently? How many engineers, and you mentioned some other roles as well in the company? Like how's roughly the setup?
Yeah, good question. I need to make sure I don't forget anyone. But I would like to say that we're 7 people right now, and then we are a good mix of kind of, so it's me and then another programmer. We have recently gotten a designer as well, which is awesome. Something I really missed quite quickly. I had the privilege of working with a lot of great designers in my previous company, and then that was high on the wish list for a while, and then now we got it. But then also we have a couple of domain experts, so sustainability analysts that are looking at the EU taxonomy, and then also any other standards that we want to move into and really know some stuff about law and sustainability. So that's really cool. Also have an advisory board that's been super helpful from a very early stage. And I think that's been crucial on figuring out to build the right product. And then also the CEO handling a lot of the commercial side, and then also now an additional person on operations and sales. So we're trying to cover as many of the roles as possible while really pushing for getting as far as possible.
Nice. And is it is it like Oslo only currently, or how do you think about the current, I don't know, work state and maybe for the future as well?
Yeah. So both me and the co-founder are from Oslo area or Norway. So this is kind of where it started. But then now we're an international team and with members in both Austria and Poland and Norway. I guess that's the locations, but still on not a lot of people. That's quite something. But then we made sure to actually meet. So they visited Oslo, all of them at some point in time, which luckily has been possible now. In the last few months, it's been all okay. But then we're remote, but also about half the team is in the Oslo area, so we try to meet at the office quite often.
Oh, that sounds good. And so maybe wrapping up a little bit. So what do you have some general tips for other engineers working remote? Do you have some routine in the morning or during the day that you find useful, or?
So I think communication is key on everything. So I think most teams probably have like a daily stand-up and things like that, but then also making sure that there's a low low threshold to initiate contact and talk is quite important. And then also maybe trying to have some fun along the way. I think it's quite easy that meetings get very efficient when they're online. You log on, you mute yourself, and then you say a couple of sentences, and then you mute yourself again, and it's all pop, 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 and you're done. And while that can be very efficient, I think it's also it might become a bit boring over time. So we've tried, telling some jokes and making sure to spend time also on just socializing.
Talking about the weather.
Yeah, the weather is actually a great asset when it comes to conversation. And especially for an international team, because then it would usually be different in different places.
Exactly.
Yeah,
usually much better weather everywhere else, especially when you live in Sweden and Norway. Usually someone is living in South Europe or some other good location. So
yeah, I think the reports. So it's been amazing weather in Oslo this summer, I would say, with a couple of weeks of less amazing. Not that I've seen so much of it, because I've mostly been sitting sitting on the computer. But yeah, I'm personally not so much looking forward to the next couple of months when it will be dark and cold and dark.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, dark when you wake up, dark when you sort of get home from work. So but yeah, I guess we're used to it, so yeah, we should be fine.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah,
get some D-vitamin pills.
Yeah, do you take that?
Yeah, I usually do.
Yeah, same here. Those are kind of strange. Like I look at those bottles and it says like 1,000% of the daily recommended intake. And I'm like, well, should I? So I take it every other day, not every day, but
yeah, I think, and it's possible to take too much of it. So one should do it with caution. But I think yeah, computer nerds, especially like us, might need some extra.
We might benefit from it for sure.
Yeah,
especially in the northern part of the world as well.
Yeah, I had a blood test once where it was like quite low, or then the whole company I worked in actually were doing like some checkup, and then D vitamin was sort of the common thing in most, at least in engineering.
Yeah,
it was shockingly low for a lot of people.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Then vitamin D supplements for sure. That's a good.
Then maybe 1,000% of the recommended intake can be good.
Yeah, exactly. From time to time. We're not medical doctors, so don't take our advice. But yeah,
absolutely no advice. Speak to a professional.
Yeah, exactly. No, and also like finishing off, like seems you have a lot of experience with React, GraphQL. You mentioned code generators, and so do you have some general tips that you think people should look into, learn a little bit more about, or anything like what do you think could be useful for anyone listening in that are also building?
Yeah, good question. I think spending some time to familiarize yourself with the tooling and the ecosystem you're getting into can pay over time. While you don't need to know everything and spend all of the time setting up your perfect everything with linters and code generators and so on, but spending some time just to see what's possible, that's a good idea. And especially when it comes to the world of like TypeScript and GraphQL, there's so much that exists, and also React in general. That's really one of the, maybe also why I'm using that quite a lot, is because the ecosystem is huge. There exists something for everything, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you do things, and focus on what you're actually building rather than doing all of these things that have been done before.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think I would definitely like. I would especially shout out to TypeScript and GraphQL code generators. Like I wouldn't do it anything different than that. Like TypeScript and code generators are such a productivity boost, and you just feel so safe when you program with it because you have autocomplete in your VS Code or your editor, and TypeScript will tell you, well, this variable might be undefined, so you probably want to do a check here before you use it. Yeah, like without it, like it's like safety nets off. It's like driving without a seatbelt kind of experience. What do you think?
Yeah,
Do you share it, or what do you think?
absolutely. I feel quite naked driving without the seatbelt. Usually
Mm.
don't. I really don't like that feeling. And I think I'm more and more getting the same without TypeScript, especially. Is it just feels it feels a bit weird, and it feels like something is missing. And yeah, it's such a safety net. And while TypeScript is sometimes a real thing to like wrangle and get right, but most of the time it is just such a time saver and comfort.
Yeah, and I think also, especially in like bigger projects, if you're multiple people working on the same thing, like it can also help you out finding bugs quickly, or just you don't need to go back in the code to see what properties are available on a specific object.
Yeah, that's the best. Like you almost don't need documentation because you can just dot and see what's available. What does it take? What's the parameters? And of course, the better written it is, the you can use a package or a library so easily. And also like getting to understand other people's code. And again, circling back to changeability, if you make a major change, it really like propagates throughout, and you know that, oh, I have to change it there, and there, instead of figuring that out a couple of weeks later.
Yeah, hoping that your test covered it or that your customers will report it. Better to find it when you build it with TypeScript for sure. Nice, Morten. Any last things you want to include here? It could be anything, like maybe like a good book that you read recently, or some good podcast that you would recommend, or some activity.
Ooh, yeah, some.
I should have prepared you for this question, so you had to think about it.
Yeah, well, I like thinking. Yeah, so I think what I've noticed the most, which maybe was to be expected, is that now when starting a startup, time really disappears. And there's even like, there's not enough time for coding, there's not enough time for sales, there's not enough time for planning, there's not enough time for anything. But making sure that I, still try to actually listen to some podcasts. I've been listening to Startup Therapy quite a lot now, which is interesting.
What's that?
It's a podcast called Startup Therapy. It was recommended by a friend. And that one has a couple of fun episodes. A lot of it is about kind of how a startup is pain, and it will always be pain. So make sure you celebrate the wins. Yeah. So it's really therapy. Yeah, and then also making sure that I kind of eat and sleep and try to do some exercise. So that's so yeah, I've been listening to quite a lot of different podcasts and things. But I want to see the new Dune movie. I haven't done it yet.
What is that? Is that some specific Norwegian movie, or like I'm not into?
No, it's like a book. It's a sci-fi classic, Dune, about some sand planet and earthworms and things. And then now there's a like Hollywood adaptation of that movie with Timothy Chalamet and and stuff.
Okay, is it coming out soon?
I think it was just a couple of days ago, at least in Norway.
Nice. All right. I'm not into movies. Like my friends makes fun of me when I say I didn't watch any like Disney movie growing up, basically. So I'm kind of out of the loop when it comes to that kind of things.
Oh, really? Not even Kalle Anka?
Well, yeah, okay, that one. But we have. I don't know if you probably know it. Like in Sweden, 3:00 on Christmas. Yeah. So
yes,
that's the tradition. But that's kind of it. But yeah, so I'm kind of out of the loop for movies. Not really interested me.
Yeah. Do you have any books or podcasts to recommend yourself though?
Yeah, sure. So lately I don't, as you say, like time flies, right? So you don't have time to do all the things you want. But well, some podcasts that I enjoy listening to is well, Sam Harris is always a good pick. There's also another one called Mindscape Podcast. He's like a physicist from the US. He's quite interesting. Lex Friedman has one about AI. Joe Rogan.
Lex Friedman, and was it Huberman or Andrew Huberman or something?
I must have missed that one.
Okay.
But yeah, those are kind of good. Well, also another one, the All In podcast.
Oh,
did you?
No.
So it's like for investors, like I guess you could, like entrepreneurs and investors, and they talk a lot of stuff during an hour, so it's quite fun. So I would recommend that one as well.
Awesome. Yeah, noted it down.
Nice. All right, Morten, I think we can wrap up there. Was really nice having you here on the podcast. Really interesting to listen to your story and your journey and your struggle and your everything that's going on in your life. I wish you all the best for the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me. It was I think this is my first podcast experience, so that was really nice to get that done. And then yeah, best of luck to you as well, and I'll make sure to nag you if I need any features or support.
Definitely looking forward to it. Okay, bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
So thank you for listening to the Build with Nhost podcast. Hit the like button, subscribe button, follow, and I see you on the next episode. And please join us at Twitter at nhostio.